I think, I mean, at least for me, there's an overlap in personality. I don't think it's a transition from like one persona into another.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm kind of the same, at least, to a certain degree. Of course, then it is a transition from, one mindset being in the field to being back home or wherever it is that you go to kind of unwind, or whatever it is that they like to call it these days. You kind of get used to it after a while, though. Like you're used to the emotions. You're used to the cycle that you're going through, and because you become used to it, you know how to better handle it. Like I know after a really rough assignment, I should probably go off and be on my own for a while, which is fine.
I kind of think of it as almost taking your mental body armor off. Just wear a flat jacket. You kind of protect yourself when you're in these environments, and it's like Oliver says, you know what's coming. You know what you're going to have to deal with, and some's worse than others.
Each assignment you go on, you leave a little bit of yourself there.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Each one takes something away from you.
Like what?
A certain part of you always stays behind. And I think, each time you go out, each time you put on your body armor, or even if you don't, each time you go out and you talk and spend time with a family, and you recognize that you get to go back to your privileged life, and they're still there, a part of you stays with them. So each time you go, you do lose a little bit more of yourself.
I think that's a great point, and I completely agree with that. And I would also say that, Nicole was mentioning within the context of the Middle East, the hospitality, or just people's hearts are open to you, even when they have nothing. And I think that you leave a piece of you behind, but sometimes with specific individuals I've met along the way as a journalist, I feel like they have become a part of me as well.
Definitely.
And they've also helped me evolve in a really strange way, either by shifting perception or by doing something very simple sometimes that just makes my day.
I asked him how life is, and he said it's very difficult, and it's actually quite cold at the moment. He's saying he's 62 years old. His son has died in Syria, so he's responsible for this whole family, but he can't work, and he has to now send the kids out to work.
Does gender play a part in the stories you can get to that maybe your male counterparts can't?
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, they call us the third sex.
Why?
Because we're not male and we're not like Afghani females, but even the Taliban needs to talk to you if they want to get their message across on whichever channel you work for. So they have to be able to talk to you. So they sort of class you as this odd sex that doesn't fit into what they think you should, the behaviour you should, be at the kitchen sink or whatever.
In Libya last year, we arrived at this petrol station where we're going to sleep for the next few days, and I'm with the male team, and there's only one room with air conditioning.
You got the room, didn't you?
And they wanted to give the room to our crew, which was, wonderful and hospitable of them. So I thought the whole crew, we'd all stay in there. And then even the crew decided that they'd sleep outside. They said they preferred the breeze. There wasn't that much of a breeze. And so I ended up with the whole room to myself.
That's awesome.
That's a great story.
That doesn't happen very often.
Wait, and you took it?
What a nice group.
We had air conditioning.
I mean, I think just drawing on my own personal experience, I think I've done quite a number of pieces. I've reported quite extensively on sexual violence in conflict zones in war areas. Be it in Iraq, among Syrian refugees, South Sudan. I think if I was a male, I would have had a much harder time getting those kinds of stories. Now, when it comes to men, I think it's much more complex than that. Because I think it depends, it's very contextual. It's premised upon also what ethnic background you come from. It's not just your gender, what color you are, what languages you speak. And, I've had situations like Sue said, where I was very much seen as a third sex, and in a way given a free pass and access. But I've had other situations where there was a constant cloud of sexual tension hanging over. And especially, and I find that particularly with powerful men, be they members of parliament, be they tribal leaders, whatever it is, that element is there as well. So I think it's so difficult it's kind of not black and white, I find, with stories that involve men, but definitely when it comes to gender and women and girls' stories, it's been easier for sure being a female.
And then you think how great it would be if you had an all-female team on occasion, which almost never happens.
I've had that once, actually.
Yeah, it's happened to me once, one trip in 20 years. But all the time, we're going with a male cameraman or maybe a male field producer, male fixer, and you're thinking, well, why is it that we never have an all-female team? Because imagine the access that you could get then, because sometimes you're female, so you can go in, you can speak to the women, you can get certain things, but they may not want a male cameraman there, or they may not, you know, if there's interpretation, they may not be comfortable speaking with the local male fixer. And that's when you're thinking, well, it'd be great if we hired more women in those sorts of positions, because I think you have, you know, probably maybe now just as many female correspondents as male, or maybe a little bit less. I don't know, it seems like there's a lot, but you're always going out with these male heavy teams, largely, I think.
This is a last push by the fighters against Daesh in Sirte. They've been battling the group since May. They've encountered fierce resistance, snipers, explosive devices. The group is pinned down a few hundred meters behind us in one small part of the city.
Shelley, you go out on your own for much of your work, right?
Yeah.
How is
definitely.
your experience different from these women who actually have a team?
It gives me more access in certain cases. In some cases it's more dangerous, but I would say that the element of the fact that it's unexpected does work in my favor quite a lot. Going in a shared taxi from, I don't know, Kunduz to Kabul, you couldn't do that as a team, but I have done that as a lone journalist, let's say. And you also get to watch people without them really watching you quite so much. Clearly, I mean, I'm not Afghan, but I can blend in quite a lot more than I could with a huge, camera.
What situation would you not put yourself into now that you would have just forged ahead when you first started out?
I would have just turned down any suggestion of a mission to Egypt, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me
Yeah.
about that. So let's talk about that. Yes.
We were in and out of Egypt after the coup, myself and various other correspondents, including Nikki when she was working for Al Jazeera. And there was a clampdown of all the press at the time. And unfortunately, at the end of the year, the only journalists that were really still reporting regularly and having an impact still in Egypt, because Al Jazeera was being broadcast in Egypt, was the journalists for Al Jazeera English. And so 3 guys were locked up in prison, and a number of us were also accused of being members of a terrorist organisation, and we were convicted that following summer of terrorist offences. And most of us still have those terrorist offences now, although the 3 guys that were locked up for 400 and odd days are now out. But, that was nothing to do with our reporting, and it was everything to do with Qatar and Egypt falling out. And albeit, having that offence doesn't stop me working, it has had quite an impact on the places that I can go. And obviously it took their liberty away for a long time, so the impact on them has been huge.